Hi everyone. Good evening, good morning. It's 7:02, and a few people have already, joined the discussion, and a few are yet to join. We can start, a little bit from here. Welcome everyone first. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure having you all here. I know it's a bit late for some of you, but this is the ideal time for both the sides of the world to come together. Before we dive into the session, I would like to start the panel discussion with a quote, which is very relatable to the context of the discussion. The key to success is to start before you are ready. A quote by Mary Forleo, who's a very well-known American entrepreneur and philanthropist. With this, I will go and take a quick 5 minutes and give you all some context about the history behind the virtual visit series and what can you expect to hear today. Just like everyone else in the world, COVID-19 took us by surprise too. In fact, it laid to rest all our travel plans to cover the length and breadth of India. Hence, there came a need to modify our plan while still trying to stick to the main aim of helping as many as innovative organizations from India as possible. Hence, we decided to take our visits virtual. With that thought, we have had very successful two chapters till now in Chandigarh and Bhubaneswar, respectively. And it has been a phenomenal response we received that has brought us here to the National Capital Region for our Chapter 3. Today we'll be bringing to you an exceptional line of panelists with a wide gamut of experience, while they will talk about the importance of technology, innovation, business investments, and expansions post-COVID-19. They'll also share personal experiences, few anecdotes on how they and their teams have paved the path to move out of the pandemic. With that being said, I wanted to, first of all, give my thanks to Mr. Gurmeet and the whole team at ESC for joining us, as the partners of the event. Since you must have seen ESC in our promotional videos, we have had a great opportunity, a great working relationship with ESC, and webinars like these are the only factors to add to the mutual admiration we have for each other. Mr. Gurmeet, thank you so much for joining us. He'll be coming to the meeting in a couple of minutes. Before that, I would love to introduce a key member of Team Fairfax County Economic Development Authority, my colleague. Joining us right from the county is Ms. Juhi Nethani, who is currently leading the international investment portfolio for India. She has been instrumental in the successful expansion of many Indian organizations, home companies, and her support has been appreciated by one and all over the years. Ms. Juhi, thank you for joining us and request you to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Dave. That's very nice of you. Nice introduction. Thanks for welcoming everybody to our show. Good evening, everyone in India. Namaste. This is Juhi Nathani. I'm Assistant Director of International Business Investment at the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. And I, along with my colleagues, Dave Malik, whom you just heard from, Ashish Mehta, he is also online, as well as Ankit Misal. I know he is there somewhere. We are Team India for Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. Just to give you a brief intro of our organization, the headquarters are based in Tysons in Virginia, and we are located in the Northern Virginia region. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the county and our organization in just a moment. But essentially, our mission is to attract and retain business investment into Fairfax County. And in order to do that, we provide a number of services to companies that are looking to expand here, as well as we support companies that are already here. So without further ado, what I would like to do is share a presentation with you to tell you a little bit about Fairfax County and Northern Virginia. Dave, if you can give me a thumbs up that you can see the screen. Excellent. So Fairfax County is located in Northern Virginia, which is right next to a little bit west of the Washington, D.C. metro area. And what I want to do with this presentation is give you an idea of what Fairfax County is, how it is conducive to business, and why it is a good business destination. So for those of you who are familiar with the region, Northern Virginia is certainly considered an economic powerhouse by businesses and people alike. And some of the reasons for that are right in front of you. It is 40% of the population of the Washington, D.C. metro area. It is also accounting for 40% of Virginia's GDP, which tells you the output or the productivity of the region as well. We're very well known for our government contracting ecosystem. A number of government contracts are going to Fairfax, to Northern Virginia businesses. And of course, it's a favorite for many corporate headquarters. Okay, just a moment. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about Northern Virginia per se, but if I look at what Northern Virginia offers specifically to Indian businesses, it's a major business center. I don't know how many of you are familiar, but 70% of the world's internet flows through Northern Virginia. We are very strong in information technology. And, you know, if you consider recent times and the fact that our session today is called Beyond COVID-19, it has been a very resilient economy during the pandemic. So our businesses, yes, they have suffered, but not to the extent that the rest of the nation or some other parts of the world have suffered. So it just shows that we're resilient. And part of the reason for that is our emphasis on emerging and advanced technologies. And we do that from the get-go in providing a very sound educational foundation for our young people. Another interesting fact about Northern Virginia is that there has been a tremendous growth in the Asian Indian population, in the Indian population or South Asian population in our region. The DC metro area has the 5th largest number of Indian Americans in the United States. And Northern Virginia, particularly in the 15 years between 2000 and 2015, saw a 700% increase in the number of Indians or Indian Americans in the region. So needless to say, it's very receptive and attractive for Indians. But what about its location? So for those of you who may not be familiar with the area, I have this map here of the United States, and we are located, I am located in Fairfax County, which is part of Northern Virginia. And it's right next to Washington, D.C., which is the capital of the country. So we are located in what is called the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States on the East Coast. And just to give you a relative view on the west, you can see where we are relative to Los Angeles and San Francisco in California, as well as Seattle up in the Northwest. So the location itself is one of the biggest advantages of being in Fairfax County. So I'm going to talk a little bit more now specific to the county of Fairfax, because that is really what we are representing here as the FCEDA India team. Like I said, our location gives access to businesses to the larger market. 2/3 of the United States can be reached within either a 2-hour drive, train, or flight from Dulles International Airport, which is to the west of where I am right now in Tysons. We have a very diverse international business community. I'll get to that in a moment. Certainly, one of the main reasons for businesses to expand to a location is the availability of workforce, and we are proud that we have a highly skilled and talented workforce of about 3 million in the regional area available. Fairfax County itself is one of the largest jurisdictions in Virginia, and in terms of population, it is the largest at a little over 1.1 million people. And those people will assert that they have an outstanding quality of life. It's a great place to bring up your family. It's a great place to work, live, and play. We're also considered a center of innovation. And as we go into the panel discussion, hopefully I have an opportunity to tell you a little bit more about it and a few more details. But I'll leave that for that particular segment. For businesses, we have our share of innovative startups, which means we also have a range of sources of capital, traditional financial resources, as well as venture and angel funding. And when it comes to real estate, both commercial and residential, we like to say that we have something for everybody. Just to mention a few success stories that we've seen recently in Fairfax County. These are companies, some of which you might be familiar with, that have recently announced a growth or expansion in the county. This is all within the span of the last 12 months. And while we all know Volkswagen, Microsoft, and Google, I'm not sure that you knew that they have a huge presence here on the East Coast. And they have recently announced up to 1,500 jobs, especially at Microsoft, and a new center of research and development available in Fairfax County in the Reston area. Just to give you a little bit information about some of the other companies that you may not know. And by doing that, I'm trying to tell you the diverse range that we have of businesses in Fairfax County. Data Robot is a data analytics company. Black Sky is a space affiliated company. We have a tremendous aerospace and defense sector, as Aspire Global, and they both develop software for geospatial positioning, as well as gathering data from IoT devices on Earth, as well as through satellite signals in order to provide comprehensive pictures to their clients. Parsons is a federal contractor. Again, like I said, federal contracting is a huge part of the ecosystem we have in Fairfax County and Northern Virginia. And normally when federal contractors announce growth, it's because they have landed a good contract with the federal government, one of the agencies, and that takes them through a few years. So where do the opportunities lie in Fairfax County or in the greater Washington, D.C. area? Our key industries are technology in each of these segments. So while we have all the big defense and aerospace names, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, what they offer here is not manufacturing. Instead, they offer their high-tech advantages and IT-related services to those industries. Certainly being next to the federal government makes us an ideal choice for corporate headquarters. And I'm proud to say that 11 of the 17 Fortune 500 companies that are in the DC metro area are in Fairfax County. They're headquartered in Fairfax County. In addition, we also see that because the area thrives on technology, it gives rise to other industries that are in the tech area as well. So in financial services, I'm talking about fintech services is what is where you see opportunities in Fairfax County. Likewise, when I talk about life sciences, it's the health IT sector, which is very strong in Fairfax County. In any case, you will see a number of emerging technologies from cloud to data analytics to artificial intelligence. And we see companies constantly innovating products and solutions and services in these areas. Also, I think it's worth mentioning that telecommunications is a strong industry here because we have both the infrastructure available and the demand for the infrastructure for fast and easy telecom connections. Like I said, to enable 70% of the world's internet to go through Northern Virginia, we have to have the infrastructure of the data centers and the internet exchange points. And a bit of a fun fact, I don't know how many of you knew this, but the first internet exchange was laid simultaneously in two places in the United States, May West and May East. May West was in the Bay Area, which we know as San Francisco or Silicon Valley now. And May East was actually exactly where our headquarters are located in Tysons. So we're proud of that fact. Coming very quickly to what we can do. So the Fairfax County EDA helps businesses grow and expand in Fairfax County. And to this effect, we provide a number of services, all of which are free as well as confidential. And we've been supporting our businesses a lot through the pandemic as well by providing them with resources and information in terms of how to get support and assistance from the federal or county or state government in order to keep their businesses running. We've done that by way of webinars, by connecting them to sources, by connecting them to mentors or counselors that can help them navigate their paths to business growth. In terms of companies that are new to Fairfax County or looking to expand here, we extend our services to all these members of an organization, from connecting you with the business community, identifying places where you can do organic business development, to showcasing your company if you were to be here, to connecting you with recruiting services to help you build your talented staff, as well as connecting you to funding sources. We have it all. We provide that through our EDA service. And like I said, free of cost to anybody who asks. Our intent is for you to realize for yourself why it is a good idea to be in Fairfax County, which is why we provide these services. And of course, our motive is to build our tax base, the commercial tax base, as well as create jobs in our community. I had mentioned that we have a very diverse international business ecosystem. We have more than 430 foreign-owned companies in Fairfax County, and they hail from 49 different countries. But we are also international in our outreach. So FCEDA has, the Blue Star is our headquarters in Tysons, Virginia. We also have an office on the West Coast in Los Angeles. We have an office in Israel, in the UK, in Europe, and in South Korea. And of course, for our companies from India, we have an office in Bangalore, which is managed by Dev. And then we also have presence in Mumbai, and you saw Ashish briefly. So good for you. And I just want to say here that we will make these slides available after the show. Please make sure that we have your email address in order to do that. But this is the FCEDA India team. Ashish and Ankit are both based in Mumbai. Dave is definitely your go-to person. He should be your first point of contact if you need any additional information about Fairfax County EDA and what we can do to support your business expansion and growth into Fairfax County. So I had a brief moment. I can go on for an hour about Fairfax County, but I would like to end here, and I want to leave you with an image of Fairfax County. Yes, this is the Tysons area in Fairfax County. But I also want you to know that Fairfax County is considered the power place because we have not only the ecosystem to help businesses thrive, we also offer a fantastic quality of life for people to live here. And I don't want you to only hear it from me. I am sure that our panelists will also give us their opinion of Fairfax County and what they think about it. But what I would really like to do is get into the panel discussion so we get a broader and more comprehensive perspective of not only the Northern Virginia region, but considerations for businesses as they expand. And yes, although I didn't harp upon it, I'm very well aware that we are in the middle of a pandemic right now. Like I said, our businesses have suffered as a result, but we have also been resilient. And what we want to share with you today is ways in which you can still capitalize the time that you have during the pandemic with all the restrictions in place to still think about your business and business growth beyond COVID-19. Thank you so much for your time. Dave, with your permission, I'm going to start inviting our panelists over. And if we can ensure that they are able to unmute themselves and turn their cameras on, that would be fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I will invite the panelists, and I know they have some slides to share with you as well. So firstly, I would like to invite Magali Garza. Magali is the co-founder of K2 Global Strategies. And Magali, are you able to turn your video on?
Yes, I am.
Excellent, that's great. So I'm wondering if you want to get started with your brief introduction, and then we can go on to the other members.
Absolutely.
So Magali, as you're introducing yourself, I'm going to pull up your slide.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Magali Garza. I'm the managing director and co-founder of K2 Global Strategies. We are located in the Tysons area in Northern Virginia. And we work with companies around the world. We help companies expand their footprint into the US market, and we assist them with several services. We help them develop their go-to-market strategy, securing strategic alliances, and also with business development efforts. On our end, it is very exciting. I've been here in this area for more than 20 years and working throughout my career with international companies. And this is a very good place for companies to establish and to grow, since also you have access to the federal government, as my colleagues have mentioned. And we have also recent cases of success with companies in the areas of biotechnology, artificial intelligence, where we help them expand into the US and secure successful partnerships and proof of concepts. And we're here, and we're very happy to provide any information and assist you with your journey into the US. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Magali. Please stay on with your camera and mic, and I would like to introduce our next panelist. We have with us Rajesh Tripathi from Withum. Rajesh. Good morning, good evening.
Thank you, Julie. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. And good evening to the attendees from India, and good morning to folks from the US. It's a great opportunity and pleasure for me to be a part of Fairfax County Economic Development Authority on cross-border perspective, to be attending this event and speaking and talking more about tax. Julie, if you can share the slide deck about Withum, that'd be great. So I'm part of the Withum family. Withum is the 6th largest regional accounting firm in the Northeast and the 25th accounting firm in the US. We are a full service firm, tax, audit, advisory, the full gamut of services the big five provide. We are also providing the same services for mid-sized to small firms who are looking at outbound and inbound, growth. We are also part of HLB International, which has footprint in about 150 countries, providing client services from tax, audit, advisory, and international tax as well. We have a large resource of local touch with advisory-minded professionals, and most of our professionals come from the big five accounting and tax audit firm. We have over 1,200 professionals, which are across 8 states, primarily in the Northeast, and we're also expanding our footprint in the West Coast with San Francisco. We have footprint in San Francisco, and we are also looking at currently, we also partner with the partners, sit on the board of not-for-profit entities. We do a lot of philanthropic work, to the society and to the community. That said, I think the biggest challenge for any company, and this is the discussion I had with Juhi, is that when she's helping companies to come to the US, the first big question that they ask is that, hey, what do we do about tax? What is the best way to set up a footprint in the US, and how taxes are looking at in the US, because knowing very well that there's a different gamut of taxes that US has, from federal, state, sales and use tax, R&D, so that's one of the biggest challenge companies face. And it's an opportunity to speak over here. So what companies should really think about, and this is the flow of chart that we're going to go into more detail, but just kind of walk you through. And then we'll have Juhi is going to share the entire presentation with you. So when a company is looking at coming to the US, the first biggest thing they have to consider is the choice of entity. What type of entity they should be entering their footprint in the US. Then they have to determine which state they have to look at. And I think, none other than Juhi described about Fairfax County and Virginia, why Virginia is important. Companies should think about that Virginia is an important destination, knowing that all the, government contracting companies, technology companies after Silicon Valley have footprint in the US. So you have to determine which state or city you have to set up a footprint. Then the third thing you have to consider is the capital structure, whether you want to have a debt, equity in the US, you want to set up a joint venture. What is the capital structure should look like when you are setting up your operation in the US? The next is that whether you should be a calendar year or you should be a fiscal year, knowing very well that companies in India have to follow fiscal year under the Companies Act. In the US, you have the flexibility that you can be a calendar year, you can be a fiscal year based on the fiscal year that you follow in India. The next biggest thing that companies have to consider, this is one of the key things that I tell most of the companies who are looking at cross-border investment or setting up operations in the US, is transfer pricing. What is your transfer pricing will look like as a part of related party transaction? Because when you come to the US, you are looking at, do I have a sales office? Am I going to be doing manufacturing? Am I going to be doing sales and marketing? So based on that, you have to make sure that your transfer pricing is properly structured and you have proper intercompany agreement so that there is no exposure in India or in the US when you are setting up an operation in the US. The next thing is employment issues. You'll have to think about that. Are you going to hire local people? Where to find the local people? And the next thing is whether there will be any employees traveling from India to set up your operation or to control your operation. What kind of visas you have to look into? What kind of immigration issues will crop up? So those are the things that you will have to consider while you are setting up your operations in the US. The next state thing is about multi-state consideration. This is one of the key things, that knowing that the US has 50 states, and if you are operating in, let's say your headquarters is in Virginia, but you have, people going and providing services in other cities or states, you have to take into consideration that what are the nexus exposure in those states, and are there any tax filing at the state income tax perspective and sales and use tax perspective. The next item you have to consider is tax treaty, which is very important because the US and India have a tax treaty, and whether if you're going to do any repatriation with your profits sitting in the US or bring equity in the US, how your withholding taxes will be taken into consideration. And when you do an exit strategy, what your capital gains will look like. For that, you will have to take into consideration your tax treaty between US and India. And the last item that you have to consider very clearly is the other tax and regulatory items. What that means is that when you come to the US, you also have to think about that what are the benefits and incentives which cities are providing, states are providing, what are the local regulatory requirements from employment perspective, company setup perspective that you have to take into consideration. So this is the flow of chart that you will have to checklist and make sure that these items are properly addressed when you are looking at an inbound investment into the US by setting up your operation. That said, Juhi, I'm going to hand it over to you. And any questions, I'll be happy to take those questions.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. Yes, I'm sure there are a lot of questions and we will have time for audience Q&A later. So Rajesh, please keep your video on and yourself unmuted when we go to the panel discussion. But I would like to introduce our final panelist, Rajesh Rai of Montaigne Ventures. And Rajesh, I'll let you take it away yourself. I know you don't have any slides and please tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thanks, Joey. You can hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, everyone, for attending from India. It's great to see all of you here. I've been investing in the US and India for many years, and it's great to see how things have changed for the positive over the years, how entrepreneurship has become such a path to success for professionals and young people. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship being kind of a great leveler globally, but also it needs an ecosystem to succeed. It can be a lonely thing. It needs an ecosystem to succeed. And Joey and the team at Fairfax County are providing that. And it's Fairfax and the Virginia area is a very vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem with a lot of successful companies and a strong community. So and a lot of new companies. All and in the neighborhood we have another large company which has come in. So the county is benefiting from all these large companies coming in. So there's talent, there is people. I guess you already heard from Magali and Rajesh, who can help build companies and scale companies in the US. So I'll kind of leave it at that. We are investors in several companies which are expanding in the US. We have a company in SaaS. I've invested in companies in the edtech area, which have come from India and have expanded in the US. So I think it's time for kind of the next TikTok to come out of India, and we already have examples. I'm always proud to see the Zoho, the ad in the airports, and hopefully some of you will have your ads in the Dallas airport. So anyway, we'll go to the discussion, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for being here, and all our panelists really for taking the time to provide a little bit of your advice and expertise to our businesses. And what I want to do is I would like to ask you a few questions. And at the end of our session, we are going to open it up to audience Q&A. But to the audience, I would like to encourage you to please post your questions in the chat box. You have the ability to do that. And after the formal panel discussion is over, you will also be able to unmute yourselves and turn your video on if you so wish, in order to ask questions to our panelists directly. So let's get started. And Magali, I'm going to start with you with the tough question, right? We are in the middle of a pandemic, as you know. We have a room full of businesses here, and every business is looking to promote itself. So my question to you is, what do companies do when something like this hits you? It's a disruptive event in terms of marketing and business development. I think you're still muted.
Oh, perfect.
There we go.
Perfect. Yes, definitely. I mean, right now, I know everyone around the world has been hit by COVID, and it's, it took many countries as well by surprise, and, every company had to reinvent and survive, right? And I think right now is the perfect opportunity. Going international, expanding into the US, it's not going away. There's the opportunity for companies to use this time to prepare, to develop their go-to-market strategy, to fine-tune where are you going to sell your product. The US is a very big market, and I think this is a fantastic opportunity to understand the market, do research, understand who are your customers and how are you going to sell your product or service to them, right? And utilize this time to start connecting with potential clients, validating your value proposition, and also understanding who will be the ideal client. How are you going to sell this? Are you going to go direct to the market or indirect, right? So there's many things that companies could take this time to fine tune and get ready. Also aligning your resources. Sometimes it is, companies, you could start talking with potential distributors or potential partners and start thinking of, okay, how are we going to target and how can we develop a proof of concept, for instance, to validate the solution in the market. Start getting all these business aspects aligned. So when it's time to come here, you're ready to go, and leverage as well the resources that, that they're available for people as well, as you mentioned earlier. So I think it's a good opportunity to get everything ready and start, right? Leverage this time.
Excellent. Yeah. So basically what you're saying is that even though there are restrictions in place, there's a lot you can still do.
Correct.
In order to
still do. And in order to get ahead, I mean, sometimes, we see companies that they have a great product, but also they need to find the right client, or how are you going to sell it? So it's the time to fine tune, to find and understand the market and get ready and identify your customers. And I think localize as well. I mean, localize for the market. So I think it's a good time to put all these aspects together and get it ready.
Absolutely. That is some good advice. And it's a nice segue into my next question, which is for Raj Tripathi. And it goes back to what you said as the first thing that companies need to consider, and that was choice of entity. So, again, we're restricted, we can't travel. Can we still establish an entity though? And in terms of choosing which type, how do you go about making that decision? What's that matrix look like?
I know that we're all going through the pandemic, and the work from home is the policy for most of the companies. In spite of that, companies can, think about setting up their footprint in the US. And the options are very easy, simple, that you have choices, multiple choices, similar to what we have in India as well when companies set up their operations in India. In the US, you can look at, if you're looking at a sales and marketing, so first you have to determine what is the reason for you to come to the US. Do you want to set up a sales and marketing arm? Are you going to go into manufacturing? Are you looking at distribution, or are you looking at our R&D credit? Also, are you looking at a joint venture? You are partnering with any other company or just in discussion, and you want to set up a joint venture in the US. So once that is decided, that what is the purpose for you to come to the US, then you can think of setting up an entity, and the choices are you can set up a corporation, and if you're a foreign entity headquartered in India, you can set up a C Corp in the US. You can set up an LLC, which is a limited liability company. The flexibility of a limited liability company is that your liabilities are limited, but you also have the choice of treating your liability company as a flow through. If you have 2 or 3 partners, it can be treated as a partnership by checking the box. And there's a check the box rule in the US, which gives the flexibility for companies that if you have 2 or 3 people and you want to set up a partnership, you can set up a limited liability company, check the box as a partnership. If you're just a one person, then you can set up a single member LLC. And if you want to set up a company, then you can check the box and treat that as a C corporation. So those are the flexibilities that you have. You can also set up a branch in the US. So a lot of Indian companies always have the thought process that, hey, I want to set up a branch in the US because the branch is treated as a flow through, and then all the profit and loss can be picked up in the Indian financial statement. So branch is also a flexibility and option available. But what I always suggest to my clients is look at the purpose, that why do you want to come to the US? And based on that, then you can decide that what type of entity. And during the pandemic, yes, people are setting up companies. I've been helping companies, currently because to set up their operation. Because sitting in India, you can still reach out to us, reach out to Fairfax County. We can help you decide the type of the entity and then get the paperwork done from India, you sitting in India, and we can help you set up the entity during the pandemic as well. So this is so the very first thing I would say, Juhi, is that yes, you have to first decide the choice, the purpose, and then we can, you can set up an entity in the US in the pandemic or post-pandemic as well.
Thanks, Rajesh. And I think you make a really good point, because every individual company's situation is different, right? And their current setup is different, their size is different. And this is where I think expertise of people like you come into the picture. So I'll just clarify what Rajesh said. How we can help is point you to people like Rajesh, who have the real expertise to be able to consult with you, look at your situation. Fairfax County EDA would not be in a position to advise you on what is the best entity form for you, but Withum is. So we're able to connect you to people who can help you make the right decision from the get-go. In my experience, I've had companies, start up as LLCs because that was the easiest thing to do. But turns out in the long run, it was not the best decision. So that is where it's really valuable to have someone who knows this area, who is able to look far ahead and help you based on your business strategy decide what form of entity you should have. So thank you for that, Raj. Other Raj, so you are here in the capacity of an investor. I am here as a proponent of Fairfax County, which is known for having its share of innovative companies. So what I'm curious to know from you is, as an investor, and I believe you invest in Indian companies that are expanding to the US as well, what are you looking for in them?
So we are investing in both, U.S. companies that are domiciled in the U.S., which possibly have a backend in India, or companies that are in India which are expanding to the U.S. So either is fine. So the structure does matter, and it's for individual companies it differs, as Rajesh said. It depends whether where do you want to raise capital from? Do you want to flip the structure? Some people may want to flip the structure so that you make it from an India entity to a US entity, because it's possibly easier to raise money from an US investor if you are based out or domiciled out of the US. So there are various things. So what do we look for in companies? And I can try to think about companies we've invested in and try to extrapolate from that. So, in terms of there are resources are the things which are limited for startups. Whether it is money, whether it is mind space, that's so. How do you manage that, right? So that is the first thing. So when you can expand after a certain point in time. So let's say there are two types of companies we see which are expanding out of the out of India. One is people who start off by saying the global market is my only market, or I start off global first. And it could be SaaS companies. They're thinking about products which are targeted to the US market from the beginning. And then there's a second group which is starting in India and they're targeting the local market. And they've reached a certain stage in the local market and then are moving towards targeting the US market. Or any other non-local market. So in that category, you have to be a little careful, right? So some of those products are very focused on the local market and doesn't translate easily to a global market. So as Magali was saying, you got to localize it, right? And some areas, some sectors are easier to localize than others, right? So for example, we've seen health and education. Mostly, it's easier to kind of bring a health or an education product to the US because the fundamentals remain the same. If you're looking at enterprise SaaS, you're targeting local SMBs in India, and you're trying to get them to the US. It's a little tougher because you have looked at a certain set of requirements, and now you're bringing. It may have worked there, but the processes are different. So we are looking at companies that are at a stage where they can leverage the advantages which they have from being in India, whether it's a robust product, a technology team, and so there is a certain unfair competitive advantage when they come here to the US. Right. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Or on the other side, we are looking at companies that may be domiciled in the US, but have developed a really strong technology product using your Indian talent, right? So we have a company in SaaS called Hybrant, and they're based out of DC. They're a DC US domiciled company. But they have a backend and a product development in Chandigarh. So it differs, but again, as investors, we are looking at how you've leveraged India, how you've leveraged it to your maximum advantage, right? So I'll stop there. I have more to say, but I'll stop there.
Yes, but actually, I'm going to ask you to elaborate just a little bit. You said that there are two types of companies. Either you are, born global and the world is your market, or you've really specialized in your field in one home country market, and now you're looking for another host country. For either of those companies, would you say that international expansion is a good strategy for growth, and why?
You just look at the numbers, right? If you're looking at healthcare market in India, for example, I'm just throwing out a number. I would say around 400 billion or something like that, right? If you're looking at healthcare market in the US, it's 4 trillion. You have an order of magnitude difference, right? So why would you not is the question, right? Now, of course, there are certain areas where it doesn't make sense. I mean, you're talking about banking to the SMBs or the underserved in India. That obviously is a different market. You're not looking at expanding, but in cases where your product is applicable to the rest of the world, why would you not? Why would you not expand? And there is no, it's English speaking countries. There's no limit to ambition. There are role models. There are paths which people have laid out. I think this is the time. I think don't be shy. Be ambitious, but do the simple things also, right? Don't be arrogant. I have seen people not do the simple things like being on time, following up, following through, and things like that. But there's no need to be shy.
Thank you. That's great advice. If you are able to and you're able to collect the resources or find them, absolutely go for international expansion.
That's the key. How do you manage your resources? How do you manage mind space? Especially of the CEO at the top people, right? In a startup, that is key. And saying no to some people, because you'll have to say no. When you're coming to a different market, you have to say no to certain customers who are taking your time. That's the challenge.
I'll just add to it, just because this is my personal area of interest, navigating through cultural differences in business is another important factor for consideration. Some that companies don't pay much mind to, I'm sorry to say, but it's so important to know, and it goes in line with what Magali said about localization, as well as what you said. Your product might be doing well in one market, but how does your destination market see it? It may not be in the same light. And I will also caution businesses that the US market is extremely appealing. Of course, it's huge. You just mentioned the scale of the market, Raj, but it's also very competitive. And I think that companies thrive only when they can meet that competition head on. So you really need to focus on the quality of your offering as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's not an easy market, but we are hoping sometimes on the flip side, because you have succeeded in a market like India, which is a tough market. It is a competitive market, so there are advantages you'll take from that when you're coming here, or as you said, when you're global first. You have an advantage in terms of the access to talent and the ability to move quickly. I think that's, when you're talking global first, the ability to move quickly is something I have seen in some Indian companies, which is outstanding. So if you can bring that, your best game, there's no holding you back.
Fantastic. That's good to know. Again, a quick reminder to our audience, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box for our panelists. We'll be happy to handle them. But I think what Raj Rai said brings me to you, Raj Tripathi, and this is more about location one more time. You said that was one of the considerations for business. Which state do you want to be? Because the US is a complex market and it's a very regulation-focused market, and regulations change by state, right? But I know that a lot of companies I meet with, and I'm sure a lot of companies that are in our audience here now, have heard that, oh, we should incorporate in Delaware, and they do. Could you maybe speak a little bit to the importance of knowing the difference between incorporating in a state versus doing business in a state?
Hey, Judy, sorry, I was not able to unmute myself, Well, that's a very good question. I think this is a million-dollar question that companies always, when they are coming to the US, they think that, hey, why should I go to Virginia or why should I go to New York? Why can't I go to Delaware where the income tax is zero and set up an operation in Delaware? But that's where the question comes down, that choice of entities, the secondary thing. First, you have to look at, why you want to come to the US and what is that you're trying to do. If you're going to do sales and marketing in the US in the technology sector, if you're going to go into the manufacturing, always set up an entity in Delaware. That's perfectly fine. But then is Delaware going to be a region for you to do your sales and marketing and target companies in Virginia or in New York or Chicago? No. So you can always set up your entity, legal entity over there for tax purposes, but it's always good to look at that. What is the purpose of your entity, whether it's, sales and marketing, it's going to be targeting companies to grow your business, a joint venture, and then come to have a extended office in either Virginia, Fairfax County, or you can go to New York or New Jersey and set up your sales and marketing arm in those regions, even though you say that your US headquarters is sitting in Delaware. So that's the important aspect that companies have to realize, that just having a headquarters in Delaware is not that you're bounded by Delaware. You can expand yourself in across 50 states. So most of like, for example, I'm doing, US international tax outbound inbound for 25 years, and I've helped so many companies come to the US. They will set up their headquarters in, either in Florida or in Delaware or in New York, but then they have footprint in all the 50 states where they have offices. They have employees going and staying there, performing services, doing manufacturing. So that's the flexibility of being in the US, that you can have your headquarters in one place, but you can always look at, having your operations in multiple states or cities.
Where you want to do business. And could you also speak about what the tax implications of those are on business, having a footprint in so many different places?
So the first thing you have to determine is that, okay, if you set up your headquarters in Delaware, Delaware does not have a income tax. It has federal. So so first we'll have to understand what are the different tax brackets that US has. US has the federal income tax, which is at the federal level. Then you have the income tax, which is at the state level. Then certain states have also got city taxes. So you have a third level of taxes, which is city taxes. Then you get into your sales and use tax, you get into your property tax, all the other taxes will follow. But the three big things that you'll have to consider is the federal income tax that you'll have to pay. You'll have to then pay your state income tax. Some of the states like Delaware, Florida, Texas do not have income tax, but they do have federal income tax that you'll pay. But then there are city taxes as well. For example, state of Ohio, if you're operating in any of the cities in Ohio, you have to pay city tax as well. New York as well. If you have a headquarters or an office in New York State, you will pay income tax in New York State. But if you have your office in any of the New York cities like New York or Rhode Island or Long Island, you will also pay a city tax over there. So once you understand your tax bracket, then you decide that, okay, should I be operating in this particular state with my services is going to be sales and marketing? And if you're doing sales and marketing, that's one aspect. Then, how many employees you have in that city or state. Then you have to bear your employment tax for that person. You'll have to bear any sales and use tax, from that respective city or state that you'll have to, think about. So what I always tell people that when you come to the US, just don't think about the federal income tax or income tax. There are a number of multiple taxes that you have to consider. And based on that, you plan your business operation and then decide where can you have your operation in which city and state so that you minimize your sales and use tax, your income tax, and there are also nexus in the US. Nexus means that if you're operating in one state, let's say you're operating in the state of New York, and you also are operating in the state of New Jersey. Now your employee is staying in New Jersey, but he's working in New York. So there is a nexus reciprocity between New York and New Jersey. Why would you pay your employees' taxes in New York and New Jersey both? So that's where we will help you plan it, that which state will oversee your employment tax for your employee. So you only pay one employment tax for your employee. So that's where the planning also comes, because you also have to look at nexus analysis and minimize your tax liability from nexus perspective.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned that actually. Sorry, please go ahead.
And also you'll have to think about that when you do, if you have your office in one, let's say you're in Delaware, you're headquartered in Delaware, but you're operating in Virginia. So you also have to think about that if your employees staying in Virginia and you have an employee staying in Maryland and you have a sales and marketing arm in both the states, there's a nexus between both the states. So you will have to think that why do I pay my sales and use tax in both the states, So that's when you do your planning from sales and use tax perspective, that let me plan my sales and use tax and only pay my sales and use tax in one state rather than multiple states, because there are nexus, there are reciprocity from sales and use tax perspective as well.
Okay, great. Excellent. And thanks for talking about that nexus between Maryland and Virginia. And for the good of the larger audience, I'll say that our area is often called DMV district, which stands for Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, because the three are so close together and it's such a commuting culture. In fact, we are like the NCR of the United States. We are exactly like Gurgaon, Noida, Faridabad. If you really look at it. And that's another reason why, we're pleased to be in this forum, because we can relate. People from Gurgaon go to Delhi to work and vice versa. And that is what you see between Maryland, Northern Virginia, and Washington, D.C. as well. So thanks for that.
That's why Joey is at home.
I'm very much at home. I'm from Gurgaon anyway. So yes, this is home to me for more than one reason.
One more thing I wanted to add, to what Rajesh was saying is, you also have to consider tax in India, right? And that's important because, your cross-border taxation is complicated.
Right. And Rajesh, to that point, I always tell that that's where the treaty comes into play. That if you are paying taxes in one country, you can always take a foreign tax credit in the other country, because if you're bringing income back to India, reported in India, and you have operations in the US, and you're bringing profits back to India, you are not going to be paying taxes in the US and India, in both the countries, for the income or profit that you make. That's where you can claim foreign tax credit. And if you're bringing any cash back to India or any loans that you give to the US and you are claiming interest in your deduction, there's a withholding tax that comes into play. And that's where the treaty that I alluded earlier has to be looked into from US-India perspective. That helps you determine what is going to be a withholding tax for any kind of FEDAP income, which is fixed, determinable, annual, and periodical income, which is dividends, interest, rents, royalties, capital gains, and how the treaty plays a role in that.
Yeah.
Great. And this goes back to what Raj Rai was saying also about how some companies choose to domicile in one country versus the other because there is a certain tax benefit, but then there can also be a certain marketing and sales benefit there. I know a number of companies that come from the Middle East to the United States. Their one motivation for coming to the US is so that they can have a made in USA stamp for a number of their products. So lots of things to consider. Not the least of which, again, is marketing, sales, and business development, which brings me back to Magali. And I want you to tell us what your perspective is on, I'm going to go back to that word, localize, on having local assistance in your host market or destination market. How does that factor in?
Yes, I think it's absolutely necessary when you're expanding into any region, especially US. I think it's important for companies, as we've been mentioning, understand the market at the same time, localize your product, your service that you're offering. But at the same time also, it is important to consider that having a local person or leveraging local experts in that they know the market, they have many years of expertise working in the market makes a big difference. It's really important, right? And I think, for example, having this liaison to your global team with someone that's in the market that can connect easily with organizations, for instance, with the Fairfax EDA, with many other professionals that are here, it's important to have this link to the market because they will have a better feel and and it could help you connect with potential partners. They're on the same time frame as your customer is. And I think in my experience, it is very rewarding to be part of an international expansion and see a company grow and thrive. And also it is important to start building your teams. And I think that's a good way to sense the market, to start building your teams with a local person that will help you out. It's like, it's the extension of your team. I always see it like that, because they're gonna complete the circle for you, because they're in the market that you're targeting. And I think it's for me, in my experience, and I advise my customers to do that, it has been really helpful. I mean, we have success cases where we've helped companies connect with the right partner and start a POC, a proof of concept. And that has been very important, not only to validate their service, but also for them to understand how the market works. As you mentioned before, it is a big market. It has a lot of opportunities, but it's different. Every state is different. So if you have a partner that will help you, that will hold your hand throughout the process, it is certainly easier and will help you out.
Is K2 available to provide that service as well, just out of curiosity?
Yes, we actually work, with the companies, not only to fine tune their go-to-market, but also to look for the right partner or client to help you decide how are you going to tackle the market. Are you going to go direct or indirect with the channels of distribution? We help you find the right partner. We help you find your customer as well. And we're here. So it is, I think, for example, many success stories that we have is like, we have 13, 14 hours difference, right? Sometimes with our clients. And I think, for example, being here in the market, which is 20 minutes, for example, from the US government. And if you're targeting public sector, we're here, we have the expertise. And I think it makes a difference because our client doesn't have to worry. You have the person in the market that will help you out, that will help you connect. And we offer those services as well for companies to facilitate the journey into the market.
And going back to offering the facilitation journey, what about once again during the pandemic? Is this something that companies can do? You mentioned research, but can they do a test marketing of sorts?
Yes, I mean, I feel like now is the time where you gotta prep your offering, but also I think start reaching out to potential customers or partners and design a proof of concept. Maybe you want to integrate your solution with this partner company in the US. And I think it's the perfect time to sense the market right now. We have a successful use case where the company was not able to come right away to the US. They had plans, but all of this happened. And we helped them put together this proof of concept with a local partner in the US in the AI technology, industry, and it is successful, and it could be done. It could be done, and I think it is important to use the time to start looking and defining and prospecting who are you gonna connect with, because I feel like connecting with partners is more than let me find 5 companies, try to call them and email them, and then maybe they want to be my partner and then I forget about them, and then in a year when I'm ready to go, I can call them back and say, hey, I'm heading there. No, it works in a different way, and I think it's the opportunity for everyone to nourish the relationships, to plan business together and opportunities, to target opportunities together. And I think this could also be done successfully when you are in another country and start planning your strategy to land in the US. So,
and I'm glad that you ended with that, because I think we should be very clear that doing this in the meantime is not a substitute to actually being here.
Correct. I feel like it's the prep work that I think ideally companies, for example, prepare, right? I mean, you are opening, I have the experience of opening and taking products worldwide for many companies, IT companies in the past. And I feel like it is it's very rewarding, and it's so much fun to go to market. And there's many steps that you have to consider if you have a product, if you have a solution, not only setting up an entity, and also if you have a product, planning your logistics, your localization, finding the right partner, all of that, you gotta do it no matter what, right? And eventually you go and you start meeting. Usually you go early and start meeting all these partners and preparing for the launch. In this case, I think this is not a substitution, is part of the go-to-market, is part of the due diligence. And I think it's a perfect time to do so. So when everything opens up and you already have all this ready, you know, marketing collateral, your logistics, if you have a product, your solution is localized. And the partner, you already established this relationship with the partner or potential client, and then it's easier because it's, once you're ready to deploy to the US, there's someone that's already in the market, you know, waiting for you and helping you go through it, right? You could start doing your marketing presence, all of these. So I think it's important, but it's not a substitution of going in the country.
Sure, thank you for that. And before I open it up for audience Q&A, I have a question for all three of you, but I will start with Raj Tripathi. You know, one thing that's looming in the room is we are going to have a new administration soon. The US just had elections, and Joe Biden is going to be president January 20th. In terms of your own personal experience and your areas of expertise, how do you see that changing, if at all, for foreign direct investment, for US-India trade ties, for just trade and investment across borders in the US and India? Raj?
That's one of the, looming question that is in everyone's mind when they're coming to the US, with the new change in administration. What will the relationship look like between the two governments? And what will be the benefits companies will think about when they come to the US, So from my experience and what I've been hearing, and I've been speaking to our internal policy makers, with Withum, is that there will be significant tax changes happening with the new administration coming. Whatever is the current corporate income tax rate, which the President Trump's government had brought it down to 21%. There was a guilty came under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, was 11.5%. So those were the incentives, benefits given to the companies. But with the new administration, we are seeing that they have proposed that the tax rate will go up. The capital gains tax rate will also go up from the short-term and long-term both. We also see the guilty rate will go up from 11.5%. We are envisioning that it could be about 23 to 24%. So that said, I think there is going to be a significant change happening, but then we will have to wait and watch once the Congress comes into power, next year, January, that who's ruling part, is it going to be the Democrats or the Republicans? They will have to then propose a bill. The bill has to be passed, So, and it'll take time for the impact of the tax changes, but that's the vision that we have, that yes, the tax rates will go up in the US to what it was right now, 21% corporate income tax rate, and other incentives and benefits were given to companies, when they were coming to the US, which we see will get, kind of increased down the road, but it's a wait and watch game at this point,
Thank you. What about Raj Rai in terms of investments?
With the new administration?
That's right.
I'm not, I think it's the people to people, the entrepreneurs kind of, it's been a wave over the last few years, with I guess the last couple of decades. But what I'm seeing is a lot of Indian entrepreneurs who are looking beyond, the usual kind of software entrepreneurship, just selling software. People are also getting into the consumer side of it. So that's very interesting, right? Targeting consumers in the US, using, these are more experienced entrepreneurs who've been successful, who are using some of the things they've learned to target consumers in the US. So I think the trend is on the up, and whatever administration comes, I don't think it's going to make a difference.
Oh, that's always good to know.
And Julie, one more thing I'll add to what Rajesh Rai was saying, that whichever government or administration comes into power, the relationship between the two countries is getting stronger and stronger every by day. And in last 20 years that I've been doing US international tax, as I mentioned earlier, I have seen that the trend of outbound was there from US to India, but in last 7 or 8 years, I've seen the trend has increased from India to the US. There's a significant increase of investment coming into the US from India, whether it's a pharma sector, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's consumer product, So there is significant growth happening from inbound perspective. And pharma is one of the leading inbound investment after technology that I have seen in last several years, investing into the US.
And I'll just add to that from the point of view of what we see going through FCEDA and supporting companies that come here internationally. I am seeing that certain opportunities have actually been created by the pandemic. We are seeing that there has been a change in the global supply chain, for example, and companies that perhaps were not thinking of the US as a destination for manufacturing now are, because they want to be close to their consumer, especially when it comes to advanced manufacturing. We have a few companies that made recent investments in Fairfax County because that's where they see their market for this product, and that's where the whole spirit of more self-reliance comes into the picture. You're not stuck because your manufacturing is located in Malaysia or China and you're serving a US customer. Right. So the pandemic has created lots of new business opportunity, and there's been a change in the dynamics of global business as we see it, including global trade and investment.
Right.
Magali, any last thoughts from you?
No, I agree with everything. I think no matter where it is, we're very positive for next year. There's many changes, and I believe the relationship between India and the US is great, and there are many opportunities for everyone. And as you mentioned as well, new sectors are coming up, and I think this is the market to empower and to connect people. So I think I look at it as a very positive effect. Getting into new year and empowering all these companies for success.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful thought to kind of close the formal discussion with. And I would like to open it up to the audience now. Before we go into audience Q&A, and while you're thinking of what you want to ask the panelists, it gives me great pleasure to introduce a dear friend, Gurmeet Singh from ESC. He joined us a little bit late. He was in very important meetings with the Department of Commerce. We are so happy to have you here now. Like Dave mentioned earlier, ESC has been a fantastic partner for FCEDA. And Gurmeet, we'd love to hear a little something from you for some of your members that have joined in, but also for our larger audience.
Thank you so much, Juhi, and let me warmly welcome everyone. And I totally agree with you. This pandemic has, if we see at the positive sides, we are meeting you for the third time, which we hardly get to use, only once a year. So I see that's a positive side of it. And there's a more and more closer interactions happening. And thank you so much for this very interesting and informative session today for our members. It was really beneficial, and I hope the Indian IT companies who joined us today, they will make use of it, and they will find it very informative and useful for expanding into their business operations in the US and particularly in the Fairfax County. And as usual, we have a pleasure to work with you in the past. And before I, come out to the scheme that we offer to the Indian companies, let me very briefly introduce you to the Electronics and Computer Software Export Promotion Council. We are a apex organization under the Department of Commerce to promote trade and cooperation in the electronics and information technology sector. We do have a membership base of pan-India, approximately around 2,300 companies, almost most of them mid-size to the large size, including TCS, Infosys, and the companies who are going to be next TCS. They are all our members, and we work to enhance their reach in the global markets, and that's how we are connected with the Fairfax County. And in the past, as we do organize a program to support the SMEs of our members companies to house themselves in Fairfax County and a few other locations. And I'm very happy to share that with you that IT sector being acknowledged as a champion sector by the government of India, we recently got approved another phase of that program, which allowed the ESC members to reach out to and to a new location, both in US and UK. So I invite all the participants. We are very shortly going to announce the selection process and also going to do a virtual visit to some of the facilities like Fairfax County and others. And the companies who are willing, although we have already got a very good response, and we are going to screen those companies very shortly. But still, if somebody wants to join, they can get in touch with this. And on the financial side, almost 90% of the expenses are being borne by the government of India to expand your reach in the important markets like US and UK. So I encourage all of you, the Indian companies, to come join ESC for this program, and wherein we can formulate two groups of 5 companies each and take you to Fairfax County or some other locations wherein you would be interested to expand your operations. So that is there. So we are all there to answer all your queries. This is going to happen next week with the support of MITI. A screening committee has already been constituted, and I will request Juhi for a separate session to show us around these companies, a virtual tour of Fairfax County Economic Development Authority Innovation Center and the incubation facilities that they provide. With this, let me apologize for being late today because of a meeting in the Department of Commerce, and again, commuting through the Delhi traffic. So my apologies, and thank you so much again for reaching us, coming to Delhi NCR, and we look forward to more frequent visits virtually, and thank you so much. Thanks again.
Thank you, Gurmeet. That sounds like a fantastic opportunity for companies that ESC is offering currently. And with your permission, we can share your contact details with the group here.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
So that they can get in touch with you to avail of the opportunity, because time is short. You said by next week you will do the screening and make the decision. What Gurmeet neglected to mention, humble as he is that I'm usually caught WhatsApping him in the middle of the night. Gurmeet, could you please help me with this? Or can you please participate in this program? And the answer is always yes. So Gurmeet, it is a real pleasure to associate with you. We've known each other now for so many years, and I'm glad to continue the association. And for sure, we look forward to welcoming your delegation to Fairfax County and telling them a little bit more about the DC area. Thank you for that opportunity.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So we'll go into audience Q&A now. Everyone should have the ability to turn their cameras on if they like. They should also have the ability to unmute themselves. What I will do is, there was a question that came in already, and this one is for you, Magali. One of our audience members wants to know a general idea of what is the cost of engagement with K2 Global Strategies.
Yes, well, definitely we evaluate, we connect with the company initially, and we provide a scope of work, and usually we charge by the hour depending on the number of hours. So I'll be very happy to connect with them and understand a little bit more about the services that you need, and provide you with a quote for the different areas that we could help you out. But we usually like to connect with 1 or 2 hours to understand, have a better understanding of your company free of charge, and have an assessment and provide you with a quote and all of that. So I'll be happy to do that.
And just for everybody's information, we will have contact information from Gali available, as well as Raj Tripathi available to you. If you need to get in touch with any of the panelists, you can always reach out to Dave. Like I said, he should be your first point of contact. And of course, we will send you ESC's information as well, so you can participate in their program too.
Sure.
I have another question, and this might be for both Rajesh, since it has to do with intellectual property. So the question here is that the revenues would be generated through intellectual property. So does the US have any special incentive for revenues generated through IP? And he goes on to mention that there is a 20% slab in India for revenues being generated through IP. So I can let Gaurav, you know that no, we don't have anything as such from Fairfax County per se. But is that something that either of the Rajeshes would like to weigh in on? And Gaurav, feel free to unmute yourself.
I guess it depends on where it is generated, which country it's generated. So I'm not an expert on this. I'll let my namesake take it.
So what happens is, first we will have to determine that where is your headquarter and where is the IP part at this point, and who has the rights to the IP. So let's take an example that if you're an Indian headquartered company, you have an IP, sitting in India, and there is an R&D development happening in India for that IP. And tomorrow you decide to set up your footprint in the US and you want to target customers, and the customers are going to use your IP sitting in India, get access, and you're going to sell your product in the US of your software. So that's where your transfer pricing will come into place that, Juhi had also mentioned, and I am also hammering on that again to everybody, that your transfer pricing is very, very important. If your IP is sitting in India, you're going to do sales and marketing in the US to sell your IP, and the use of that IP will be your US customer. Your transfer pricing should highlight that when you are selling your software to the US or the rights to use the IP in the US, there will be a portion of that sales that will have the royalty piece to that. And that royalty piece will attract withholding tax in the US. And under the US-India tax treaty, currently it's 15% of your royalty that will be deducted by the US. And you can then use your IP, to your US customers can use it, and you can explore that IP over here. So that's where your supply chain has to be determined very clearly on the IP, where it is parked, where it is developed, where is the use of the IP, who's going to use it, where the sales and marketing is going to happen, and where is your customer located. And based on that, your intercompany agreement between US and India will be structured. And then you can, make sure that you're properly doing your withholding taxes and reporting it correctly under the transfer pricing agreement between US and India.
Thank you,
So Rajesh, this is Gaurav. If I'm allowed to ask a follow-up question.
Absolutely.
All right. So if you're saying 15% will be deducted in the US, then does India and US have a DTAA for the intellectual property taxation part?
What was the other, Gaurav? Can you repeat that question?
I'm saying that if 15% is going to be deducted as a federal tax in the US, then does India and US have a double taxation avoidance agreement to give 15% credit to the Indian company?
No, so Gaurav, I think what I was mentioning to you, that 15% is purely your royalty payment. So when you are doing your IP and your IP is parked in India, and you set up your sales and marketing in the US, so your sales and marketing will have a transfer pricing in place. So let's say that your US entity, you set up a LLC in the US, and the LLC in the US is purely sales and marketing. And to run that operation, you're going to spend let's for discussion purposes, $100 to run your sales and marketing arm in the US. So that's where your markup will come into place of 5%. So you'll have to have a markup of 5% on that purpose. I'm not going to go into the transfer pricing logistic. So every year you will spend $105 in the US to run your sales and marketing arm. That's one aspect. Your federal tax will be paid by the US, will be deducted on that 5% markup sitting in the US. That's your profit that you're parking in the US. Now tomorrow you start selling your IP in the US to your customers in the US. that sales, so let's say you say that I'm going to sell my IPA, software to a US customer, it's going to be $10, that I'm going to charge my customer. In that $10, you will have to have a portion that you'll have to then come up with the supply chain that how that sales will happen. Is the sales going to happen directly from India to the US to your customer, or are you going to use your US entity to sell your product to the US? That supply chain will have to be understood and structured so that then whatever federal tax has to be determined will be deducted in the US on that sale of the product based on the supply chain. Then the third thing you'll have to think about is the IP. When your customer is using your software, you sell your product in the US to your customer, you sell it for $10. In that $10, there will be a royalty piece that will be part of your sales of that software. And that royalty piece is where you will have to then bifurcate in your agreement that my product that I sold for $9.50, for 50 cents is my royalty. And then 50 cents is where you will have withholding tax in the US at 15%. So there's a bracket of taxes that you'll have to calculate separately. Federal tax is separate, your income tax is separate, your royalty payment from US to India will be separate, and the withholding tax will be is where you determine your double taxation agreement between US and India, and your 15% will be only on that 50 cent of that royalty piece.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, hope that answers your
question. A little bit of clarity is there, no doubt.
And we can get into more discussion. We can get into more discussion because in all the supply chain on the software side has to be structured very properly, and your intercompany agreement has to be structured because there is a portion of profit that you have to park in the US as a part of transfer pricing. There's a portion of your expenses that you have to determine in the US, and there's a portion of the use of the IP that you'll have to determine, and what is the withholding tax or royalty that you'll have to pay to India because your US customer is using the IP, and what is the withholding tax and the double taxation treaty that you'll have to determine, and what tax benefit you can claim out of the double taxation agreement.
So this is a great, example for how you can take the discussion offline because it's pertinent to your particular company. So we are coming up on time. I know there's Shri, I think you have one question. If you can be real quick about it, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yes, hi, Rajesh, I have a question for you. We manufacture drones. So we intend to start production and reach out to the market sometime in 2022. So we would be very keen on tapping the US market. We are a global first tangible product company. So what do you suggest should be our initial as well as long-term structuring, like how we should structure and what elements of the taxation that we have to consider very seriously, and as well as structuring the company?
So, I'm not going to go because going into that whole analysis, it's like a feasibility analysis that you will have to do when you are entering the US market. But I'll just give a very high level because of the time as well, and it takes a lot of effort, to walk through. So before you enter the US market, first you'll have to see that if you're going into a garment production, is the production going to happen in India, and then you're going to export it from India to the US? And once it gets imported, then you'll have to look at trade and customs aspect. Are you going to do where is going to be your distribution, your warehousing facility? How are you going to distribute your product into the US? Which cities and states you'll have to distribute? So all that aspect will be taken into consideration. And then the tax implication will have to be determined. So you want to be closer to a port because you're going to be importing your garments to the US, And the port is where one aspect, then trade and customs, the second aspect. Third aspect is your supply chain. How the product will be sold, who's going to sell your product? Is it to your sales and marketing team in the US? Are you going to sell it directly from India to the US? Or are you going to use your US subsidiary to do the sales, and then the profits get sparked in the US, and then you repatriate your profit to India? So all that planning will have to be done based on your 5-year vision, and then we can structure it accordingly for you. That what's the best plan for you to set up your operation beginning, where it's going to be very inception, very small, with the growth of the next 5 years.
And I'm just going to take
Thank you
this
very much, Rajesh.
opportunity to tell everybody, and Ankit, I know you have a question there in the chat box, and hopefully what Rajesh said answers that as well. Every individual company's situation is different. We do highly recommend that if you want to get perhaps more detailed information about your specific issue or your specific opportunity, please get in touch with either Rajesh Tripathi or FCEDA separately, and we'd be more than happy to discuss this. But there is really no right answer. Shri, we've seen a lot of companies that start out small and then slowly build up, because it also, like Rajesh Rai said, depends on what is the availability of resources. Your resources, you may not have very deep pockets to begin with, but you slowly develop them over time. And nothing is really set in stone, although it is recommended that you have a 5-10 year plan and structure your organization accordingly. Nothing prevents you from making changes, once your own situation has changed. So I will let Ankit know that there are distinct advantages to setting up your production from the get-go in the United States, if that is going to be your main market, right? There is a certain level of trust that you need to build up in order for a business to be successful in a particular market. And that trust comes from being a local. And this is why we emphasize, Magali did, I do, we emphasize the importance of hiring locally, even if you want there to be a face to the name of the company. And also it gives you the ability to interact one-on-one directly with your target market. So Rajesh Tripathi's expertise aside, there are a number of considerations that you have to do from the entity structure and logistical purposes, but certainly some things are just pure good business. And those come from establishing a good relationship with your consumer. And there are a multitude of ways to do it. You can take the help from K2, you can build your own team slowly, but ultimately there is no substitute to having a trusted local name when you're looking for solutions for your company. And that's just common business knowledge. So with that, I'm going to call an official close to the panel. I'd like to thank Magali, Raj 1 and Raj 2 for being on the panel with us, for sharing your expertise and all your wonderful ideas. And this only opens the door to more conversations, is what I'm going to say. And I'm going to thank the audience also for their participation, for staying on so long, and hand it over to you, Dave, to close the session for us with a few announcements. Before I give the mic to Dave, Gurmeet did put his information on the chat box, so you can email Gurmeet at escindia.com if you want to know about their program next week. Dave, over to you.
This, as Juhi mentioned, this brings us to the end of Chapter 3, virtual visit to the NCR. I would like to thank you, to everyone, since this being late, for joining us at this time and being the part of the panel discussion. And a big thank you to the whole panel, Ms. Magali, Mr. Rajesh Tripathi, Mr. Rajesh Rai, and Ms. Juhi also, for conducting the session so well. I'm leaving my coordinates on the screen for everyone. You all have received my coordinates from the emails previously, but since we are talking about one-on-one meetings and have a personalized, customized discussion, while I have received the request from 3 people, and already the slots are filled, but nonetheless you have my coordinates. Feel free to call me, mail me anytime. I'm awake all the time. And I would love to line a meeting and take your this successful transition into the US right away. Thank you so much and have a good night.
Thank you all. I look forward to meeting you all.